And if you could just introduce yourself.
I play keyboards in Alice.
My name is Anna Maria, and I am the founder and vocalist in the band Vajra.
What was the initial start?
Yeah, so we all have pretty storied histories.
I was just bored during COVID. Did a little demo, put it out, and it was pretty well received by the community. And
always had a thing for horror punk and stuff.
Something that started with me and a laptop during quarantine, and just like, oh yeah, all those times I said, if only I didn't have to work my job all the time, and now like I could have time to do that. Well, now this is that.
All right. And if you could introduce yourself to the fine folks at home, I'd really appreciate that.
Hi, I am Kym Trailz from the Tomb of Nick Cage and Kym Trailz in the Tonk Wave.
Right on. Welcome to the show. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your music, how you got started in it, and what some of your influences are. So let's start from the beginning with how did you get into music in the first place? Where did that all happen?
High school, actually. I was a senior in high school. Well, I've always been listening to, especially like heavy metal and punk rock. But in high school, I really started getting into heavy metal, and I fell in with some punk rockers, and the rest was history. Although I've played everything from touring with goth bands. I played in a ska band for 5 years. I played
Oh,
bass in a
that's
ska
so cool.
band. But I got my roots playing punk rock back in the mid 90s with hardcore bands.
Hmm. What bands in particular were you playing with back then?
I started out playing in a band with a band called Backwash back in the back, oh, I hate to say it, like 1994. And I was just starting out as a guitar player. I'd never been in a band before, but the guys really rooted for me to start playing guitar for them. And it was kind of like an anomaly at the time. I mean, they just had the Riot Girl movement start, but you really didn't see too much of that anymore. So it warms my heart to see so many women in rock and roll right now. I mean,
Mm.
it's like particularly in the horror punk scene, but of course the Misfits were like, I heard Where Eagles Dare and that was it. Like I was off to the races. They were my favorite band. I went out with they had just released the box set. We all ran out and bought that, and we were all shocked by the lyrics because we had been playing Misfits covers for years and the lyrics were all wrong. And so, but that was fun though, is to be playing all those songs and just mumbling along to what we thought Glenn was saying. So I'm thrilled to still be playing Misfits covers after all this time with
For
proper
sure. For sure, for sure. So that's so cool. I love hearing that kind of story. And I guess where I'm curious then, so Misfits obviously played a big role in like developing your sound and where you guys are to this point. But you guys don't sound like in the Tomb of Nick Cage or in any of the other projects that I've had the pleasure of hearing so far. You guys don't sound like a Misfits ripoff, right? You guys sound to me like a very original, very well influenced project. And one of the things that I like in bands when no
Oh
worries.
well.
One of the things that draws me to like different bands is when they have that. I mean, yes, you can hear influences, but when you can hear different influences combining to make this very unique kind of sound that is, it's hard to be 100% original, in any genre of music or in any form of art. But when you pull from these different elements together and you put them together and you can hear that there is a genuine effort at some form of originality, at some form of sound. Most, if not all of the bands that I've had on the show so far, I feel they exemplify that. And I feel that, with the Tomb of Nick Cage, I feel that way as well. The first time I heard you guys was on a compilation album. It was, I believe, one of the We Are Horror Records, Horror Punk's Not Dead compilation. And shout out to Dan and We Are Horror Records. Love you, buddy.
We love you,
Um,
Dan.
so I'm just curious, like, what do you feel goes into making the sound for both of the projects you listed? Your new one that is just getting released here, and with the Tomb of Nick Cage. What do you think goes into that makes it different from other bands in the scene?
Well, Sean and I started out doing a new wave project. Actually, we discussed this last night at our show. We got interviewed last night It was a live interview. They kind of like to interview the bands and then they play. But we started out, it was kind of like we just wanted to go in and do a new wave EP. So we went in and did that, and then it was never supposed to be live. We named the band the 2 Minute Cage because he's actually got his tomb here in New Orleans. It's a giant pyramid. It's amazing. So it was kind of like one of those things where like this is just going to be a one-off EP project. And so we Sean's other band got an offer to play a show, and I said, well, what if we did this live? So we got a bunch of metal guys to come in and play these new wave songs that these new wave kind of like post-punk songs I had written, and kind of like the rest is history, and that was 10 years ago. So
Okay.
it was for something that started out as kind of like this was just for us, we were just going to put something out, and it just kind of turned into this thing. And I love the way that it grew because everybody in the band has got different influences. From like some of our members like love Rush, and I'm a huge fan. Me and the Eddie the drummer and Sean are a huge fan of bands like Oingo Boingo and to Slayer. So
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
all that going on, and it just kind of organically happens. Like I kind of like write more poppy type stuff, and then they take it and they add kind of like their heavy metal spin to it. So that's kind of how that happens. And we never want to limit ourselves to one genre because we listen to so many different things, that I feel like whatever comes out organically, that's what we go with. And I don't want to confine myself to one sound because to me that's
Mm,
boring. So I
yeah.
know it kind of makes people confused with consistency when they listen to our album, but it's like I guess that's a price I have to pay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like that's the sign of a good artist. If you are putting out authentic music that is true to everyone in the project, is comes from a diverse a diverse range of artists, and is also challenging to the audience. I mean, you build an audience that has to expect that, first of all. But
Yeah.
to me, that signals that like you're making the genuine effort to, move not only your sound, but like the sound in general forward. And I really appreciate that. I like it is
Thank you.
not easy. People dog on pop songs a lot of the time. And
Yeah.
this is one of my pet peeves. Like people dog on pop songs, oh, they're easy, oh, whatever else. And I'm
Mhm.
like, well, are they though? Is it really easy to write a good pop song? Because,
That's
if it
right.
was, everyone would be doing it. At the same time, true mastery, things like you were saying, bands like Rush or Slayer, or, it's
Mhm.
a whole spectrum. And like I love hearing and seeing where these different influences come into a project to make it. And bands that can embrace all of those elements, I think they have the strongest and most interesting sounds as a listener personally. People on the show will know that a big part of like what I look for in bands that come on is, are they good songwriters? Are they interesting songwriters? Because there's the verse chorus thing that everyone
Mhm.
dogs on in pop, but sometimes it's cool to go on those extended journeys that like you just can't get on a lot of radio music, and it's unfortunate, but it is the way it is in
Yeah.
modern times. Nothing to dog on the pop artists that are doing it. It's more about the people that are controlling those stations, unfortunately. um
Right.
um but I want to go back to something earlier you mentioned.
Sure.
Earlier you were talking about how back when you were starting in that hardcore band, it wasn't very common for there to be women in the scene, and how there's you're so happy that there's so many more, especially in horror punk. um, what do you think changed? I know you mentioned the Girl movement, but what do you think changed between then and now? And who are some artists then that you like may have looked up to, and who are some artists now that you think are really cool and might deserve some attention, that are fronted by women or other people?
Oh, well, we have so many great ones in our scene now. But going back then, definitely bands like L7, Bikini Kill, 7 Year Bitch was my favorite. I love all those Riot Girl acts. And Sean and I, we were both big fans. Now the scene is filled up with so many good ones. The Immortals from Texas, Tracy and the Horror Punks from they're from Texas too. And then of course, my one of my biggest influences is 45 Grave. So
Mm,
they had that perfect blend to me of punk and punk and horror mesh together, and new wave and all that kind of stuff. So if I had to pick a band that is probably most influential to me, I guess it would come as no surprise. It would be bands like 45 Grave and what was going on at that time. So some of the earlier punk rock acts too, because punk rock has always been inclusive. And and growing up in like the metal scene and stuff, at the time I didn't feel that. It's gotten a
Mm.
little bit better, but still I feel like it's underrepresented.
For sure, for sure. And like you're saying, it is making progress. It is going forward. I've noticed that myself. One of the things that I'm really interested in is these same kind of dynamics in other places. So like for example, in Japan, they didn't have a lot of the same hangups. And right now, I don't know why, but in the last 10 years, there's a huge explosion of in heavy metal and punk rock and alt rock and everything of not just like female fronted bands, but
Hmm.
all female bands, and they go hard over
Yeah.
there. I love it. I can't think right now off the top of my head. Sorry, audience. I get that pressure from the camera of bands in particular. But if I was to say one that I would want the audience to check out at home, Trident. They're an all-female band. It's a three-piece from Japan. They're absolutely killer. And I would highly recommend checking them out. They're not sponsoring the video or anything like that. I just love their music. You mentioned Tracy and the horror punk or
The Phantom Punks. The
the
Phantom
Phantom
Punks. I
Punks. I
messed it
did it
up.
again.
I know, Tracy and the Phantom Punks. Again, same thing with the camera. As soon as it's rolling, I'm just blathering on. But yeah,
Yeah.
Tracy and the Phantom Punks. Sorry, guys.
No
Um,
worries, no worries.
yeah.
I recently had Jay Phantom. He's one of the Phantoms in the band on and he works with Tracy a lot and they do a lot of the songwriting together. And they're great. I love listening to their music. I think their aesthetic and their image and everything they've got going is really working for them. I'm really excited to see where they go in the future. Likewise with your project as well. I'm excited for to see where everything's going. So let's actually segue into that. Is there anything or do you guys have any I don't know, I'm just asking, are there any releases you guys have coming up? Is there anything that any news you guys want to talk about that might be relevant to the scene or anything like that?
Well, absolutely. Actually, we've got the Horror Punks Not Dead Volume 1 coming out on vinyl. We're on going to be on
Yeah.
that one. Hi, Dan. How's it going? We're also hopefully going to release an album this year with Horror Punks Not Dead. So,
Oh,
or
okay.
we are Horror Records. So I'm
Okay.
excited about that.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, no, like it so often like because of the work Dan has put in, he's touched so many bands and so many people in the scene. I honestly, when I was coming into the horror punk scene, the first thing I did, I people laugh at this, but I Googled how to write horror punk and like it came up with this list of first there was this video by like Pagefire that was kind of like dogging on the thing, and then after that there was like a whole series of like actual bands really playing the music, and Dan's compilation came up on it and I was just blown away because I knew there was a horror punk scene and I was vaguely aware of it, but like I was more connected to, I would say, the punk and like post-hardcore kind of thing of the early
Mhm.
2000s. And so when I was coming back to it, because I'm a father and I stepped away for a little bit from doing music and everything. Now that I've come back and I've been looking at it again, it is amazing how much talent there is in the scene, in particular in the horror punk scene right now. And I think that right now there is a huge potential for a wave of acceptance and popularity of these very talented bands. The bands are learning to navigate social media in a way that no one else has had to do before, and there is a whole wave of appreciation, we'll just call it that, for gothic subculture that's growing right now.
Yes.
I'm here for it. Like I always considered horror punk a part of the gothic scene. I know some people find that contentious or whatever, but I always say they're at least cousins, if nothing else. And so like when one rises, I see the other rising. Sorry, I'm rambling there.
No,
Let's
no, I'm in total agreement with you.
um
So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
we try to bring that aesthetic too. Like that's one of the things that I try to do when if I write a song about a topic, I want the music to reflect the feeling of the film or the subject matter. So that's what takes it in a different direction. So a lot of these films to me are like have more of like a gothic type vibe to them. So I try to bring like a little bit of like the more of that ambiance in. So I definitely hope that we have a foot in both worlds.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm so like first of all, I'm excited for those releases you mentioned, and I completely agree with you. When I've been listening to your guys' sound, that's what I hear is that ambiance you're describing. That to me is one of the elements that makes a good horror punk song versus a punk song, right? So like a
Mhm.
punk song, it can it I always like people say, oh, it's three chords and the truth or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I mean, yes, that's true,
Yes.
but like you, you can do more than that, you know? But to me, like good songwriting in any genre is really important. And some of the elements of that are like in horror punk, leaning into the atmosphere. And that can be hard to do because punk is known for its speed and its aggression and for these things, but that's not always been the case. Punk used to have a more experimental nature to it. And I'm
Yes.
starting to see with a lot of bands that coming back. There,
Mhm.
yes, the speed and aggression is there, and I love it. I'm here for it. But at the same time, there's also been like more introspection introduced back into it. There's more, it's especially in horror punk, more atmosphere, slower and heavier and darker tones, which yeah, you can write the horror punk song that has the 50s doo-wop sound, and that's perfect. I still love that. I still think that's great. But when you really lean into the aesthetics of the art that you're in, when your sound and your image and the artwork and everything comes together, that is just beautiful to me. That is a sign of true art there. And I think a lot of the scene is kind of coming together that way recently. And I think it's kind of cool. So anyways, that's my thoughts.
No, I'm with you. Look at Boogeyman. They had
Yeah.
their album come out. It was a concept album. They had a book release with it. I mean, and it was took you on a journey. And so that's like one of the bands that I wanted to shout out for exactly what you're saying. It was amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Um, okay, so let's wind down here now. Before we do though, are there any bands that you feel in the scene? I know you mentioned the Boogeyman just now, but are there
Yeah.
any bands in the scene, whether it's horror punk or otherwise, could be any genre, that you feel deserve a little extra attention and spotlight that maybe your fans should go check out? They could be a mile away in style different from you, or, you know, like a sister band you play with all the time.
Yeah, I would say the Immortals #1 from Austin. They run a haunt. Skara is amazing. Front woman, but she's so involved with the scene, and the Austin scene is so amazing. It's like everybody comes together, the artists, the musicians, um, just it's like such a beautiful thing that I wish, we had more people on board here. We're starting to kind of like get our group together here though, with like paranormal nerds and stuff like that. And so I just love that, because it's like an extended weird family. Let's see who else right now is like I said, Tracy, I love them a whole lot. Oh, and I can't not do an interview and not mention the Tomb Tones
Yeah.
because those guys are the darlings of the scene. And I will say, I mean, they're just amazing. They're nice people. I love everything that they put out. They're fun. So I would say if I had to pick the bands right now that I love the most, then those would probably be them.
All right, for sure. Before we get going, are there any social media places you'd like people to go to? Where's the best place they can hear your music, buy your music? Where do you want them to go to find you?
Well, you can go to www.tombofnickcage.com. I think www.thetombofnickcage.com. Of course, we're on Facebook, Instagram, uh, X or Twitter, whatever it is. I don't do too much over there, but I do try to just do reposts over there for anybody that's over there. And of course, we're on the TikToks that you kids like so much. But yeah, we're on TikTok. I'm still learning the reels and the way to do all that. So but I'm getting better at it now. So we've been on there for a while, so we have a few things up over there as well. But I hope to have more content up there soon.
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute blast. I look forward to hearing those releases when they come out down the line. And you know what? I wish you guys all the best of luck and keep killing it, guys. Like I love what you do, and I've been excited to have this conversation with you. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Same. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right.